Hello, everybody. Thank you for tuning into the PG Show, where we talk about all things college football. And today we got to talk about something that I have been wanting to talk about for a while. And this is going to be 5 dark horse playoff teams for the 2022 football season. But before we do that, go ahead and hit that like and subscribe button. Let me know what you guys are thinking down in the comments below. Who do you guys think is the biggest dark horse to make the college football playoffs for the 2022 season? All right, let's go ahead and let's dive into it. So before we get into the dark horses, I want to kind of line out on why certain teams did not get picked. I am not going to pick a Texas, a USC, or an Oklahoma, or Notre Dame. I'm not picking anybody that's made it to the playoffs, and I'm not picking any of the overhyped teams. I am purely picking teams that people are not talking about that I actually kind of like. And the first one that we're going to start off with is going to be a controversial one that I know a lot of you guys are going to get onto me for, but it is going to be the Nebraska Cornhuskers. And here is why. So let's go ahead and look at their schedule. They're starting off with Northwestern, which, let's be honest, it's going to be a pretty tough game for them, but they should be able to come out and win that game. So they should start the season 1-0. And then they've got to play North Dakota and Georgia Southern. Those should be cakewalks for them and easy 2 wins. So that would put Nebraska at 3-0. Now, this next game is probably, outside of Michigan, the toughest game on their schedule. And that's going to be Oklahoma. Now, the good news for the Cornhuskers is that game is at home. And also, their first 5 games are at home. So, for the Cornhuskers, even though Oklahoma is probably one of their toughest games, if not their toughest game on their schedule, they could win that game. Especially with everything that they've gotten this year, whether it was in the transfer portal or they have returning. And I want to specifically talk about their quarterback play, because let's be honest, if they would have had better quarterback play last year in Norman, there's probably a really, really good chance that they would have beat the Oklahoma Sooners in Norman. And that's Casey Thompson. And Casey Thompson's dad used to play at the University of Oklahoma. That's his alma mater. He played at Texas last year. And outside, and before his injury, he was pretty good. And so I think they definitely took a step up with Casey Thompson and having Adrian Martinez transfer out. All right, so they got Casey Thompson, and I think Casey Thompson actually kind of changes the way that Nebraska is going to be able to play this year, because you don't have necessarily a quarterback that is run-focused. And Casey Thompson can sling the ball. And I think a lot of people forget that because, he got hurt last year, but Casey Thompson was playing really well at the University of Texas. He's playing really well. And I think a lot of people should be high. A lot of Nebraska fans should be high. But let's just say they lose the Oklahoma game and they win the rest of them, right? So you got Indiana. That should be a win. Rutgers should be a win. Purdue's going to be a really tough game, but they could win that game. So let's give them that one. Illinois, they win it. Minnesota, they win it. At Michigan is going to be really tough. You got to go to the big house. But, they played Michigan really tough last year, and Michigan went to the college football playoffs. And I expect Michigan to take a step down from what they did last year. Not too big of a step down, but I do expect them to take a step down. So there is a chance that Nebraska could go win that game. So let's just give them that game, right? Let's just give them either the Oklahoma or the Michigan game. Doesn't matter which one. Let's just give them one of them and then they'll lose one of them. Wisconsin. Let's just say they win that one because Wisconsin's going to have really crappy quarterback play, so they should be able to beat Wisconsin. And then at Iowa. Again, Iowa doesn't have great quarterback play. You should be able to beat them, right? So that would make them 11-1. I don't know if they go to the Big Ten Championship with that schedule. I mean, they might go to the Big Ten Championship. I think it just depends, right? Do you win all your conference games and only lose to Oklahoma, or do you lose to Michigan and, beat Oklahoma? I don't know. But Nebraska definitely has a chance to make the college football playoffs this year especially with their schedule. I think their schedule is pretty easy outside of the at Michigan and having OU come to your house. The next team on the list is the Kansas State Wildcats. And you guys might be going, why do you think the Kansas State Wildcats? Let's dive into it a little bit. So first off, the Kansas State Wildcats have a pretty easy schedule. I mean, all things considered, their schedule's kind of a cakewalk. But they play South Dakota to start the season. They're going to win that game. Like, if Kansas State should drop 50 or more on South Dakota, it's Bush League. And then they play Missouri. SEC team, reliving the Big 12 rivalry, but they should win that one. Tulane, they should win that game as well. Then they have to come to Norman. Now, I think Kansas State can give Brent Venables and this team a run for their money like they normally do, especially with the addition of Adrian Martinez. Next up on the slate, we have Kansas State. And I think Kansas State has a pretty easy schedule. Well, I say pretty easy. It's probably hard. Let's be honest. Let's just go down the slate and let's talk about it. But if they win out, and in the Big 12, it is very possible for Kansas State to have a chance to only come out of this thing with the one loss. But I think they made great additions to their team. Before we get into their schedule, let's just talk about this. I think they made great additions to their team throughout the transfer portal. You get a guy like Adrian Martinez, who Nebraska pushed out and then brought in Casey Thompson. I know we just talked about how it was good for Nebraska to push out Adrian Martinez, but Adrian Martinez is a great, improvement for the Kansas State Wildcats, especially with what they were running with Skylar Thompson. And then not only that, but you're going to pair him with Deuce Vaughn, who might be one of the best running backs in the country. Yes, you heard it here first. Best running back in the country. But let's go ahead and look at their schedule. So they start off with a home game against South Dakota. They should win that game. I don't think anybody will argue that. They should win that game by at least 50-plus points. And then they play Missouri, right? And I'm excited to see this game because now you're bringing back a rivalry that has kind of not been there since Missouri left for the SEC. But they should be able to win that game as well. Missouri's not any good. Tulane, they should be able to win that game. At Oklahoma, I think is definitely going to be one of their tougher games on the schedule because you're having to go to Norman. However, we have seen Chris, I think it's Chris Kleiman. Everybody correct me if I'm wrong. But we've seen Kansas State have success against Oklahoma. Now, yes, you can say, well, that was with Brent Venables and I think 1 or 2 years with Bob Stoops. But no, like Kansas State gives Oklahoma trouble historically. And so do I think Brent Venables is just going to come in there and stomp a mud hole in Kansas State 55-0 this year? I don't think it's likely. But I think there's a good chance Kansas State could come into Norman and cause a problem. They're the ones that ended our streak originally, our home winning streak. Let's just say they lose that game, but it's a close one. Then you play Texas Tech. They should win that one. Just talent disparity. Like, they should win it. At Iowa State, I'm going to be honest, I'm down on Iowa State this year. So Kansas State, let's just give them that. That would put them right now at 5-1. And this is, I think, where their schedule gets a little interesting. At TCU. What is TCU going to be this year? I don't know. I think Kansas State's a better team than TCU. I think they were better than them last year. So I'm going to give them that win, 6-1. They have Oklahoma State at home. And this one's big because Oklahoma State just lost their defensive coordinator. So, yes, they brought in a guy that was helping Jim Knowles run that defense before, but now you've got a little bit more. I don't know. I just think they got a better chance of winning this. And so, especially at home, it becomes a little bit more favorable. Oklahoma State's probably still going to be favored in that game, but it becomes a little bit easier for Kansas State to try to win that one. Then you've got Texas, right? what is Texas going to be? We just asked that same question with TCU. Is Texas going to be an elite team that can go in there and dominate teams like Kansas State this year? Or are they going to be like what they were last year and drop duds to Kansas? And if they're exactly that, which I don't expect them to take a huge step up this year, when we get to what I think about the Texas Longhorns this year in the over-under for the Big 12 totals, we'll get into a little bit more about what I think Texas is going to be this year. Personally, guys, I don't think it's going to be a huge step up for Texas, but for Texas fans, if you win 7 or 8 games this year, I think you're moving in the right direction. I don't think Texas fans need to go in there with the expectations of, we're going to win 10, 11 games. No, don't go in there with those expectations. Remember, you're rebuilding. But we're not talking about Texas. We're not talking about over-under. I think there's a good chance, again, with Texas coming into Manhattan, Kansas State could win this game, especially if it's an 11 o'clock game. Let's look at Texas's schedule and see what they're having to do. Texas has to go at Stillwater the week before, right? So let's be honest, 2 weeks on the road and then having to play Oklahoma State in Stillwater, that could be a trap game for Texas if it's an 11 a.m. kickoff for Kansas State. Those 11 a.m. games for Kansas State are great. So then here comes either their hardest game on the schedule or their second hardest game on the schedule at Baylor in Waco. So we're going to do what we did with Nebraska. You have at Oklahoma, at Baylor. Let's just give them one of those games and let's just say one of them they win. I don't know which one it is, right? So let's just say they win it because I already said Oklahoma beats them. That puts them at 8-1, 8-1, 8-1. Then the final 2 games, Kansas State should beat at West Virginia and Morgantown. You should win that game. You should. Even with JT Daniels. I mean, quarterbacking the helm of West Virginia, you should win that game. And then you've got Kansas. And I mean, yes, Lance Leipold has that program on the right direction. But for Kansas State, you should win that game. So the Kansas State Wildcats, ending at 11-1, potentially could go 12-0 if they just have some super magical season and can beat Oklahoma and Baylor. But I think we're already kind of making a stretch to say, hey, yeah, you're going to beat Oklahoma, Oklahoma State, Texas, and Baylor, or go 3-1 in that stretch. I think we can all of you guys will agree with me that, hey, we're really reaching there. But hey, I want to give Kansas State the benefit of the doubt. Like, I kind of like this team a little bit. Like, I think that they could be good. All right, let's go ahead and get into another. Well, I say another. It's going to be a future Big 12 school. BYU. Man, guys, their schedule is so favorable for them. Really favorable. I'm just going to run through their schedule, and then we'll talk about wins and losses here in a minute. At South Florida. Baylor at home. At Oregon. Wyoming, Utah State, Notre Dame, Arkansas, all at home. Well, Notre Dame's a neutral game. At Liberty. East Carolina at home. At Boise State. Versus Utah Tech, so at home. At Stanford. Let's talk about this for a minute, because I think BYU is a really talented team. And they're one of those teams where if they're on your schedule, you don't want to play them because they're good year in, year out, and they're going to put up a fight. South Florida, they should win that game. I don't care. Like, they should win it. Reverse Baylor. Baylor at home. Does the home field advantage for BYU in this game matter? What does it look like for them? Seriously, like, does having Baylor at home matter? Like, is your home field advantage going to make that big of a difference? And if you guys go to ESPN, which is where I'm looking at the schedules, and you guys look up at their matchup predictor, they're saying about they got a 42.8% chance to win that game. Baylor, do we know what they really have at quarterback? I mean, we know they're going to be good on defense, but do we really know what they're going to have at quarterback this year? And it's not like they were putting points up on everybody last year. It's not like that they were doing that. And BYU was putting up points on everybody last year. Their last 5 games against Virginia, 66 points. Idaho State, which I know is like an FCS school, 59 points. Georgia Southern, I know, but still, 34 points. USC, 35 points, which if y'all somehow high on USC this year, then you got to admit that USC at least has talent and should be able to compete with BYU, and it's not just because USC sucks. And then UAB, which they lost that game, but they put up 28 points. I mean, BYU can put up points, and Baylor's last 5 games, 27-20, 27-21, 21. Now, they won all of those games pretty much on defense. I don't know. Do they get home? Does their home field advantage at Lavelle Edwards Stadium really give them that much of a boost? I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to give it to BYU. Because, again, with it being the second game of the season for Baylor, and us not really knowing what Baylor has at quarterback, there could be some growing pains there for Dave Aranda in that offense with a new quarterback coming in. So here's probably their toughest game on the schedule, and I'll explain why here in a minute. You have to go to Eugene, Oregon. That's an extremely tough place to play. Extremely tough place to play. Probably one of the top 5 stadium atmospheres in college football. I have to. They're going to lose that game. Like, you don't have an elite quarterback. You don't really have an elite running game. So I can't get, there's nothing that says in my mind, okay, BYU is going to go in there to Eugene, Oregon and give and beat Oregon. Now, they might give Oregon everything they want and more, right? They might give them a run for their money, but I don't think that Oregon's really going to lose that game in Eugene. And I don't think any of you guys are going to pick that either. Now, if for some reason you guys disagree with me and you guys think BYU can go to Eugene, Oregon, put it down in the comments below. So then you got Wyoming at home. You should win that game, right? So let's just say you're 3-1 at that point. Utah State, 4-1. Utah State was really good last year, but Utah State, they've got a pretty tough schedule this year. I mean, if they beat Alabama, heaven forbid they beat Alabama, now they got to go to Tuscaloosa and do it, which makes it even more than impressive. If Utah State goes to Tuscaloosa and beats Alabama, mark my words, Utah State is going to the playoffs if they win out at that point or only lose 1 game. Now, they probably got to, well, I don't know. What do you guys think? If Utah State beats Alabama in Tuscaloosa, do they go to the college football playoffs with 1 loss? I mean, they went to Tuscaloosa and beat Alabama. So, and if you beat Alabama and you beat Nick Saban, it's like earning an extra 2 wins. But Utah State played really well last year. What was their record last year? Like, was it 11-2 or something like that? They had a pretty good. Let me pull it up for you guys. They had a pretty good schedule last year. Yeah, they went 11-3 last year. Their schedule wasn't good, but yeah, they went 11-3. Last year they did lose to BYU 34-20. So let's just go ahead. Let's give that game to BYU. BYU should win it. So then you got Notre Dame at a neutral site. I don't really know where this game is being played. Let me pull that up for you guys. But let's talk about this one a little bit. Notre Dame. What are they going to be in the first year? And I know I keep asking this question, but what are they going to be in the first year of Marcus Freeman? We know that Marcus Freeman's going to put up a stellar defense, but what are they going to be? So they're going to play at Allegiant Stadium, which I believe is in Vegas. Vegas, yes, Vegas. It's going to be a nice game. But anyways, can BYU put up enough points to beat Notre Dame? And I think that's the key here. If they could keep up toe for toe with Notre Dame on the offense, I think there's a chance because you're going to see 2, I think, pretty decent defenses going up against each other. And you don't want to play a field position game with BYU because BYU's punter he's not Michael Turk good, but he's pretty dang good. But for the sake of argument, let's give them that game and say they win that. Now you got Arkansas at home? Okay. I could see it. Potentially. Yeah, I could see it. So let's just give it to them. Don't really need to say much more than that. Let's just give it to them. Just for giggles. At Liberty. You should win that game. Eastern Carolina, or East, I don't know why I keep saying Eastern Carolina. East Carolina at home. That's a W. At Boise State's going to be pretty tough. They should be able to win that game. Utah Tech at home. That should be a W. At Stanford. Stanford's not going to be any good, but you should win that game. So let's just say they come out of this with one loss. Yeah, I can see them making it. Their schedule is favorable, right? I think they can afford to lose one game and make the college football playoffs as a group of 5 team just because their schedule is so hard. This is not the schedule that, like, we get on everybody for not having. No, like, this is the kind of schedule that Notre Dame plays, right? Tough out of conference teams, but then you play some Bush League teams to kind of fill it out. But yeah, with one loss, they should be able to make it in. All right. Next up, let's talk about NC State. And let's get into it. At East Carolina, W. Charleston Southern, W. Texas Tech, W. UConn. It's 4-0. NC State could start the season 4-0 and then have to go to Clemson. That's pretty decent, if I do say so myself. Like, they should be able to pack a punch there. So let's talk about this at Clemson game. At Clemson is going to have a stellar defense. Question is, can they make enough plays? So I guess the question is, can they make enough plays against Clemson? I don't know. I mean, they do have Devin Leary, who is probably one of the most hyped quarterbacks coming into the 2022 season outside of CJ Stroud and Bryce Young. But, I mean, they've given Clemson a run for their money before, and I don't think this Clemson team is going to be as good as some of their national championship ones, where NC State actually gave those teams problems. So I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility to say, hey, NC State could win that game against Clemson. So let's just put it 5-0 NC State. Florida State. I mean, Florida State's not been very good lately. So 6-0. At Syracuse, 7-0. Virginia Tech, at home, 8-0. Wake Forest. Tough offense. Should be able to win it, though. 9-0. Boston College, 10-0. At Louisville, 11-0. At North Carolina, 12-0. And then probably have to play, I don't know who in the ACC championship, but did they get rid of divisions? If they didn't get rid of divisions, and if they got rid of divisions and they got to play Clemson again, it's going to be a tough one. But NC State has, I feel like, a pretty favorable schedule. Their toughest game on that schedule is at Clemson. Everybody else, they should be able to just walk in and beat. All right, last but not least, let's talk about Miami. Miami, I think, is definitely probably on the top of this list to go make the playoffs. Another pretty favorable schedule. I mean, they have to go play Bethune-Cookman. I hope I said that right. First game, that's a W. Southern Miss, W. They have to go to College Station to play Texas A&M. But I think Mario Cristobal has this team ready to go. And then you've got a quarterback in Tyler Van Dyke, who a lot of people are saying could be a Heisman finalist this year. So is it out of the realm of possibility to say Miami could go into Texas A&M to College Station and beat them? I don't think so, because Mario Cristobal is going to have this team ready to play. So that's 3-0. Middle Tennessee, 4-0. North Carolina, 5-0. At Virginia Tech, 6-0. Versus Duke, 7-0. At Virginia, 8-0. Florida State, 9-0. At Georgia Tech, 10-0. At Clemson, again, like when we talked about NC State, their toughest game on the schedule. But is it out of the realm of possibility for Miami to go in there and play with Clemson? I think Clemson is leaps and bounds better than Texas A&M. So maybe Miami drops that game. I don't know. But let's just say that they win it. For the sake of argument, let's just say Miami goes into this thing undefeated, or maybe one loss, and their one loss being to Clemson or in the ACC championship game. Mario Cristobal is going to have this team ready to play. And I'll bet your bottom dollar, too, that if Miami comes out and wins 10, 11 games this year, or goes to the college football playoffs, you guys think they're on a roll with recruiting now. Just wait until they do that. But they had a decent year in the transfer portal as well, right? They got some pretty good guys, especially on the defense. So that helps them out. Like, Clemson's later in the season, so the team should have it put together. I think there's a really good chance, guys, that Miami could come out of this thing undefeated. So if I had to rank them from 1 to 5 in terms of teams that I think are the dark horse and teams of likely to least likely, I think it's Miami, Nebraska, NC State, Kansas State, and BYU. Thank you for watching, everybody. I really appreciate it. Let me know in the comments below, who do you guys think is your dark horse to go to the college football playoffs in the 2022-2023 season?